Okay, good morning everyone in Hazak Baruch. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful Tuesday morning as we are studying together Perashat Bo. Our Perashat begins, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, God says to Moshe, Bo el Paro, come to Paro. Okay, very interesting language that's used. Today's class, first of all, is sponsored anonymously for the Refuah Shlema of all of Am Yisrael. Hashem should bless our sponsor with all the blessings of the Torah. Amen. My friends, Rabbi here gives us something very important that we should study together, just spend a couple of minutes on. So that we could really understand the Makot as a whole. It's something that we've heard probably in the past different versions of, but Rabbeinu Bahia is the one who's saying it first. First that I've seen. But really it's not him, it's the Hazal. It's the Pesikta Zutrata. Look at this. V'darshu Razal, our rabbis say, Ki Eser Makot, the 10 plagues, Detzach Adash Be'ahav, the 10 plagues that we say on Pesach, Detzach Adash Be'ahav, that's the acronym for the 10. Kemo Shehem Mesudarot Batorah Keseder Hazeh, the way they are ordered in this Torah, in the Torah in this order. Hayu Hashtayim Behatra'ah, the first two were with a warning. V'Hashlishit Shelo Behatra'ah, the third one without a warning. Dalid Tzadi, Dam Tzfardeya, Behatra'ah, with a warning. Kinim belo hatra'ah. Arov dever behatra'ah. Shechin belo hatra'ah. Barad arbe behatra'ah. Hoshech belo hatra'ah. Makat bechorot. So you see the order here? 1 and 2 warning, 3 no warning. 4 and 5 yes, 6 no. 7 and 8 yes, 9 no. And what about the 10th? Makat bechorot. Shehi ha'asirit behatra'ah. Also there's going to be a warning. Why? Yahzor, you have to go back. So 1, 2, yes, 3, no. 4, 5, yes, 6, no. 7, 8, yes, 9, no. 10, yes. Okay, that's the order. That's the pattern. Okay. If you look in the text, you'll find the first two. By the way, if you don't believe him, just open the Chumash. You'll see that 1 and 2 always have a warning. The first two of the trio have the warning. But it's even more specific. Be'ahat yomar hitiyasev lifnei paro. The first of the two, meaning plague number 1, plague number 4, and plague number 7, will have the words hitiyasev lifnei paro. Stand in front of Paro. That's where he was warning him, by the Nile. Ubashniya, but the second one, 2, 5, and 8, says, Bo el Paro. Come to Paro, in his palace. Hethil b'makat dam, as an example, the first plague of blood. Lech el paro b'boker v'nisafta l'kurato asefat hayor. Go to Paro in the morning where he's by the river. So that's the first one, is by the river. Where would the warning for the frogs be? B'makat sefardeim. Where would the warning for the frogs? He says, Bo el paro. Come. Beautiful. Let's see if that stays true. Makat kinim. What about the third one? Where was the warning for the third one? Trick question, right? The third one doesn't get a warning, like we said. Very good. Umikan darshu razal, and here was what our rabbis teach us. Mi shelaka v'shana shuv en matrin oto. You know why that is? You get warning once, you get warning twice. If you don't pay attention after that, no more warnings for you, right? We don't have to warn a guy 3 times. You warn a guy twice. Let's go and continue. Let's see. B'makat arov, the fourth plague. Hazar, go back to the beginning pattern. And he says, Hashkem baboker ve'etiatzev lefnei paro hinei yotzev hamayma. Again, the fourth plague, following the pattern, is a warning by the Nile. Okay. Then, Makat David, the fifth, Hiskir bo el paro. Makat shehin in sham hatra'ah. The sixth one, no warning. Barad, Hashkem baboker ve'etiatzev lefnei paro. That's number 7. Arbe 8. Bo el paro. That's our perasha, by the way. Our perasha, Bo, it's the 8th plague, which makes sense why it's Bo, because remember the middle one of every 3 gets the word Bo. So number 2, number 5, and number 8. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe Bo el paro. Okay, now you understand why our perasha is Bo, because it's the 8th one, which is the Arbe. Choshech, the next plague, in sham hatra'ah. There is no warning. Very nice how he finds that pattern. I don't know if you ever realize that. I know a lot of people know they're divided into warnings and no, but this is even more precise. He's telling you even the warnings they were given in different places. Ve'al ken, and therefore, he says, Nir'e li lefaresh. I want to explain, in view of this statement, why was it like that? Moshe haya modi'o hamaka, ve'haya oseh lo hatra'a pam achat ala ye'or, pam hashenit behechalo. He says, you know why first time is lech and the second time is bo? Because the first time he's going out to the river. The second time he's coming into his palace. That's why he says lech and then bo. Or hitiyatzev and then bo. Ve'inyan bo el paro she'askiru haktuvim b'chol pam u'pam bi'uro she'yikanes behechalo. The word bo el paro means go into his house, go into his palace. Ve'haktuvim mochichim ken, and the psukim prove this. Guys, it's unbelievable. After the first warning, the first plague, where was that warning? According to this pattern, where is the first warning of every three? It's outside. What does the pasuk say? Miyad nichnas paro el hechalo. Right after the first warning, it says Paro went into his house. Shneimar vayabo el beto velo shat lebo gamazot, and he didn't heed this warning. So you see, he went in, so he was outside. Okay. And you should know the reason. Why was it that God wanted that one warning should be by the Nile? Why did God orchestrate it in a way that warning should be on the Nile and then another warning in the palace? He's saying, Lehorot al onsho vegeuto vegeono ki haya mitga'eh. Because this Torah over here is teaching us how wicked and arrogant Paro was. He was so arrogant over two things. People take pride and arrogance and security from different things in life. Paro, he was arrogant in two ways. Number one, al yi'uro, on his Nile. Like the pasuk says, Li ye'ori v'ani asitini. Paro acted as if he was the creator of the Nile, as if he was a god over the Nile. Yeah? And secondly, he took pride and arrogance in his palace, my house, protection. Pasuk says he came into his house. What does that mean? What does that matter? Why is Pasuk telling us that he went into his house? Who cares where he went? He went into the house, he went into the pool, he went to make a barbecue. What do I care where he went? Pasuk is telling you, because he went into his palace, he got arrogant. You know why he said no afterwards? Because he went into his palace and he looked around and he said, what? I'm going to give in, I'm going to buckle to this nobody? After, look at my riches. Look at my security guards. No! Get out of here! Not letting you guys go. That sense of arrogance came because of his palace. Yeah? And he stopped paying attention to him. Because if not this, why is Torah telling me that he came into his house? So this is an amazing, amazing Rabbeinu Bahye. Again, Rabbeinu Bahye over here is telling us that the Makot, there's an order to them, there's a system to them. The first always was a warning by the Nile. The second was a warning in the palace. The third had no warning. 1, 2, 3. And then again, 4, 5, 6. And then again, 7, 8, and 9. This was the order of the plagues. And you should know, he says, why were the first two warnings, one by the Nile, one by the palace? Because that is exactly where Paro got his arrogance from, those two places. And therefore the warnings came specifically in those two places. This is the first Rabbeinu Bahye for today. And let's move on now to another Rabbeinu Bahye. This one is going to be in chapter 10, Pasuk 19. Chapter 10, Pasuk 19. Let's read the Pasuk first. Pasuk says, Vayafoch Adonai. This is the plague of locusts. And again, there's a lot to talk about in the plague. But after Paro said, okay, Moshe, I'm sorry. Let the plagues go. Let the locusts go. And I'll leave you alone. I don't know if you ever seen locusts. Very scary. They consume all the food. There's literally not a grain left. There's not a crumb. There's no food. It's starvation. The locusts come, they devour everything. Everything. There's nothing left to eat. So Paro's biff, he's afraid. He says, okay, Moshe, please, ve'ata, please, please just forgive me this one time. Pray to God. Remove. He calls it a death. That's how scary locusts are. Please just get rid of this death. Moshe leaves and he prays. And what does God do? He listens. God brings Ruach Yam. He brings a wind from the sea. Hazak me'od. Vayisa'at ha'arbe. Vayitkaehu yam masuf. And the wind blows the locusts out of Egypt. Lo nish'ar arbe ehad bechol gevul Mizrahi. Now, this is interesting. Okay? When my computer decides to wake up. Okay? Let's see what Rabbeinu Bahya has on this pasuk. Look at this, my friends. Rabbeinu Bahya says, loading. Okay, sorry. Rabbeinu Bahya on this pasuk again. The pasuk says, Lo nish'ar arbe ehad bechol gevul Mizrahi. Not a single locust remained in all of Egypt. So, let's see what Rabbeinu Bahya has to say. Moshe prays and the locusts leave. Look what he says. Tfilato shel Moshe. The prayer of Moshe, b'makat ha'arbe. Moshe's prayer at the end of this plague that they should leave was so powerful, she'amda ad hayom, that it remained in effect till today. She'el arbe mafsid bechol gevul Mizrahi. Rabbeinu Bahya says, I'm going to tell you a little bit of history, historical fact. You should know that till today, he says, there wasn't a single grasshopper that re-entered Egypt. That's how powerful Moshe's prayer was. When Moshe prayed to God, please let the grasshoppers leave, not only did they leave, they never came back. And even if there's a plague of grasshoppers in Israel, which is right next to Egypt, wow. He says, even if grasshoppers come from Israel and they enter Egypt, they won't touch the food. Veze davar yadua. He says, and this is something, a well-known fact. He doesn't have to prove it. He says it seems to be a fact. Even if locusts will fly southward from the land of Israel and cross the border with Egypt, they will not touch the fields in Egypt. Unbelievable. Okay, so this is how powerful Moshe's prayer was. When Moshe prays that the grasshoppers should leave, they left, they never come back. Vehinen, by the way, he says, Divrei Moshe betfilato ne'emanim l'sha'a v'ledorot. You should know that when Moshe prays, in general, the prayer worked for then and forever. He gives an example. V'chen bediburo she'amar rak bayeor tisha'arna. He says, I'll give you an example. This is the 8th plague. Let's go back to the 2nd plague. What did he say after the 2nd plague? What was the 2nd plague? Frogs. He says, Rak bayeor tisha'arna. Moshe says to Paro, okay, the frogs will leave, and they will only remain in the yeor. He says, if Moshe said it, guess what? Nish'ar sham ad hayom sheretz hamayim. Till today, there is this type of frog. I mean, this is wild. My friends, you'll only get this here. Till today, he says, if you go to the swamps of the Nile, there's a certain sheretz, there's a certain swampy creature, hanikra, which is called an altamse. It's an insect. An altamse, not an insect really. It's a creature, and he puts over here in parentheses, crocodile. Crocodile, okay. Vesham mitgadel. There's a certain animal, he says, and it multiplies in this land of Egypt, in the Nile. That Moshe said it should stay there. And there's folklore, sometimes he leaves the Nile, which is where he lives, and he comes up to the shore, and he devours whatever he sees. Sometimes he could consume 2 or 3 people at once. Ve'en shotim begufo hanit ve'hitzim. And arrows and spears don't help to kill him. Ella in yikavenu litkoa bebitno. Only if you can strike him in his belly. Sounds like a crocodile to me. Again, I'm not the alligator hunter guy. Alav shalom. But this is what he's saying over here. Ve'amru harofim, and the scientists say ki yesh lo eres, that he also has a certain poison. V'anogeach be'yufo mazik le'avdam. Touching him could hurt you even after death. Ve'hu min sefardeya. This is one of the species of frogs. By the way, you may have seen certain pictures that when they talk about the plague of frogs, they show you a crocodile. It's not incorrect. It's accurate, because over here Rabbi Mizrahi is saying that. He's saying that tzfardeya doesn't mean frogs. Tzfardeya means animals from the sea. There could be many different types. A reptile, right? Crocodile. So one of them is this tzfardeya. So because Moshe prayed, the crocodiles will never leave the Nile. This is a bad thing, right? Now they'll always have a crocodile problem in Egypt, because Moshe said they will stay here. So they will never migrate to other places in the world. They'll stay in Egypt. But you see again how powerful Moshe's tefillah was and effective it was. Okay, let's move on to a final Rabbeinu Bahye for today. Chapter 11, Pasuk 2. Here we go on. We're done with the plagues for now. God says to Moshe, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe. God says to Moshe, Od nega ehad avi al paro ve'al Mizrahi. God says to Moshe, one more plague. And then I know he's going to send you out. Now, which plague is this? One more plague. It's the 10th plague, right? So God's saying to Moshe, one more, and then you're going to leave. Okay? I know you were very patient, Moshe. Thank you for your patience. We appreciate your business. Okay? 9 plagues. Paro is stubborn. God says to Moshe. By the way, there's a lot of interesting commentary here. Where did this conversation take place? Moshe, after he gives Paro the warning, right? It sounds like he stayed in the palace. Right? Paro calls Moshe after the Choshech, and he says, please. And then right then and there, God says to him. So this is a conversation that takes place between God and Moshe in the palace, something that we don't ever find before. But let's see the next pasuk, pasuk 2 for today. Daber na be'oznei ha'am. God says, please tell the Jewish people. Ve'yish'alu ish me'et re'ehu, ve'isha me'et re'uta, kele kesef uklei zahav. God says to Moshe, please ask the Jews that they should ask their Egyptian neighbors for some clothing, for some silver, for some jewelry. Now, why was this important? Why did God have to say, please make sure you leave with money? Why was it so important that the Jewish people leave with money? Very simple. Because at the Brit Ben Abetarim, at the promise that God made to Avraham hundreds of years before, that his children will be slaves in a foreign land, the language was, Va'avadum ve'inu otam 400 shana, they're going to be slaves for 400 years. And then afterwards, ve'aharechen yetzu b'rechush gadol, then they're going to leave with a lot of money. God promised Avraham that there's a bright side to being slaves for 400 years. The bright side is they're going to leave with a lot of money. I don't know if it's worth it, but at least that's what's going to be something positive coming out of it. Really, the rechush gadol wasn't physical, wasn't dollars, wasn't the green money. The rechush doesn't mean money. Rechush means possession. You're going to come out with wealth. Wealth, not money wealth. Over here, there's a wealth in Egypt that the Jewish people learned. There's a wealth of compassion, empathy. The Jewish people forever were different because of what they experienced as slaves. That's the real wealth. The wealth is the lesson that you learn from the challenges in life. But that's already something else. But either way, on a simple level, there's money here. The Jewish people, that's what we want, right? We like money. So God says to Moshe, to Avraham, they're going to leave with a lot of money. And therefore God says to Moshe, please, I don't want Avraham to call me a liar. I'm worried Avraham is going to complain to me. So do me a favor, make sure that the Jewish people leave with money so that Avraham will say, God, you kept your end of the deal. This is what Rashi says. En na ela leshon bakasha. You should know that the word na is always an expression of please, bakasha, entreaty. Here it means I entreat you. I beg of you, Moshe. Admonish them about this which follows. So that righteous man, Avraham, right? Look at the language. Shelo yomar oto tzadik Avraham. God says, please, I don't want Avraham coming to me with qualms and complaints that I tortured them, but I didn't give them the money at the end. Okay? I want Avraham to get off my back. That's what it sounds like God is saying over here, which is very problematic. Very problematic. Because it sounds like the only reason God is letting us take money because he's worried that Avraham is going to now be complaining, annoying. If Avraham wouldn't complain, you, God, you wouldn't keep your end of the deal? Imagine you tell your son, if you do good, if you get 100, I'm going to take you to a baseball game. He comes home with 100, and then you say, as the father, you say, or the mother, doesn't matter, you say, all right, I'm going to take you to the baseball game. If I don't take you, I'm never going to hear the end of it from your mother. What? That's not why you should take me, Dad. You should take me because we made a deal. And I kept my end of the deal and you should keep yours. And what about honesty? But it sounds like God doesn't care about honesty. It sounds like God only here cares about appeasing Avraham. What's going on over here? So there's many answers to this question. On a simple level, the real answer is that really, I mean, not the real, one of the answers is that the truth is God didn't have to give the Jewish people money right here. Because the promise of making a lot of money when we leave will end up being fulfilled when we get to Yam Suf. When we got to the sea, a lot of gold washed up to the shore from the Egyptian chariots. There was so much money there that actually the Jewish people had to be dragged away from the seashore because they were so addicted to the money. There was so much they couldn't even get their hands on all of it. So the real wealth came at the Yam Suf. So really it just creates another question. If we're going to make money later, then why does God have to allow us to take money now? We don't need to take this money when we're leaving Egypt. We're going to get it in 7 days. And the answer over here is very powerful. God says, really, I don't have to give you money now. I'm going to give it to you in 7 days. But I'm doing it now for Avraham's sake. Because Avraham doesn't know that in 7 days I'm going to give you money. He is unaware. So for him, I'm going to give it to you. And him is not only him. Him is the Jewish people. The Jewish people are also unaware that they're going to get it in 7 days. And for them, I'm sure they had passed down this saying, this statement, that they're going to get a lot of money. And imagine the Jewish people leaving Egypt unaware that there's money coming later. Many of them would probably be very upset. What's going on? And God is teaching us an amazing lesson. A lot of times in life, you know how the story will play out. A lot of times in life, we know, let's say you're in a business deal. You get the phone call of the good news. So you're aware that it's all working out well. Your partner doesn't know. He didn't get the phone call. He starts calling you up, asking you, nervous. You see the phone call, you're like, get him later. What is he getting nervous for? It's fine. You know it's fine, but he doesn't know that. For his sake, you got to accommodate him. Right? As kids, sometimes our mother called us and we didn't answer the phone. And we get home and she's all hysterical. Why you didn't answer? Mom, I was fine. Okay, you knew that. I didn't know that. You know that you're fine wherever you are in the world. Your mother doesn't know you're fine. For your mother's sake, you got to be considerate. You got to pick up the phone to tell her you're fine. That's what God's saying. I know you're fine. I know you're going to get money later. But you don't know that you're going to be fine. And so for you, I'll give you money now also. And an amazing level of sensitivity to other people. Thinking about the worries that other people could be going through and accommodating them. So this is how Rashi understands the berna. Let's see now what Rabbeinu Bahiye wants to add. Ve'yish'alu ish me'et re'ehu. Let them ask from their neighbor for gold and jewelry. What does she'elah mean? Sho'el, in the language of law, anyone here that ever learned one of the tractates of Nezikin, which is the laws of damages, there are 4 different types of watchers, people that are responsible. There's a shomer chinam, someone who's watching for free. There's a shomer sachar, someone who's watching for payment. There's a socher, a renter. There's a shoel. A shoel, what's a shoel? A borrower. What does it mean here? Ve'yish'alu. They should borrow? They're borrowing? Says Rabbi Bahye, in she'elah zo, the word here, she'elah, is not borrowing. Like it says, bekelim, which means to borrow on condition, al menat le'ahzir. Here, she'elah doesn't mean in order to return. But what it means is, she'yish'alu mehem bematana. What it means here is to ask for it. As a gift. Outright. We were asking for these items not as a borrowing. I want your watch. I want that beautiful lalik vase. I want it. I don't want to borrow it. I'm asking it to keeps. Keepsies, as we used to say when we were kids. Keepsies. VaHakadosh Baruch Hu yiten lahem hen. And God will give you charm, and they'll say, sure, you could have it. Ve'en zeh gnevat da'at sheyitzaveh b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu chas v'shalom. Because God forbid that God would say to lie to the Egyptians. Borrow, as if like you have to, hey, can I borrow it? Sometimes someone comes to you and says, hey, can I borrow this? And they know in the back of their minds, they're never giving it back. We didn't have to lie to the Egyptians. Could I borrow it? Just, I'll return it. And then we ended up running off and never giving it back. God wouldn't command the Jewish people to lie like that. But we were asking it as a gift. And it was completely ours. It was within our rights to ask for the gift. Shehare, after all, I mean, think about it. How much did we work for them? Years and years and decades and decades. And we know that the Torah writes, be'eved, a slave, that the master frees him after 7 years. The Pasuk says, Torah writes that if you're going to free a slave, you shouldn't send him empty-handed. You got to give him. Send him off and help him get back on his feet. Give him enough money to start a business. If that's the case with a 7-year slave, alahat kama v'kama, how much more so the Egyptians that we worked for them for 210 years? They should send us with money. And therefore, us asking from them for kelim was not us being unfair. We deserved every one of those monies that they gave us. That explains the first half, the ve'yish'alu. What about, look at this, the next words. Ish me'et re'ehu. Man should ask his friend. Ve'isha me'et re'uta. And every lady should ask her female friend. Asks Rabbeinu Bahye. Uma shehiskid lashon re'ehu. What in the world is the word re'ehu? Re'ehu. What is re'ehu? Mishloach manot ish le're'ehu. Remember, Purim's coming up, right? Exciting. Okay, not because we're going to drink alcohol. No, not because of that. Okay, what does it mean? You should give mishloach manot to your buddy. What does it mean here? Ask your buddy Egyptian for clothing? How can you call an Egyptian a buddy? Yireli, he says to me, maybe, I think, he says, Shekodem matan Torah, before the giving of the Torah, hayu kol habriot haverim. All of mankind were friends. Re'ehu is appropriate before the Torah was given. Aval le'ahar matan Torah, but only after the giving of the Torah. Shehazir HaKadosh Baruch Hu et Torah al kol umah velashon. After the giving of the Torah, we know that God offered the Torah to every nation. Again, literally or metaphorically, but God offered the Torah to every nation. Velo kibluha. None of them wanted it. Ad shekibluha Yisrael. The Jews came and said, we'll take it. Right? Remember, God came to Esav, and Esav says, what does it say? You can't kill, we don't want it. And we went to Ishmael, and what does it say? You can't steal, and they said, we don't want it, right? And he came to the Jews, and the Jews said, how much is it? And God said, it's free. And they said, okay, we'll take 2. Right? So, right, all the different jokes. But either way, the Jews accepted it. So what happened was, at that moment, something changed. Yatz'u kol ha'omot min ahava. At that moment, the world left the vocabulary of the word ahava. The word friend no longer applied to the rest of the world. And now, the word re'ehu applies only to a Jew. Now, we became one family, separate from the rest of the world. We still respect them. We still don't steal from them. We're still friendly. But the word buddy, re'ehu, ahim, brother, only applies to Jews. Before the Torah was given, we were brothers with mankind. All of the world were brothers. After Torah was given, we're only brothers with Jews. As an example, I'll give you a halakha. Lechol avedat ahicha. There's a commandment that if you see a lost item, you have to return it. And the halakha says, ahicha velo goy. This applies only to achicha, only to a Jew. If a person finds a lost item that belongs to a Gentile, one doesn't have to go out of their way to restore it. Again, you can. It's very nice of you. But there's no halakha. Right? Similar law to overcharging. Right? Lo tashich le'achicha. Or charging interest. The halakha of interest only applies to a Jew. To a non-Jew, you're allowed to charge interest. Yes. Why? Because once the Torah was given, the word ach, brother, friend, only now applies from Jew to Jew. This is the answer of Rabbeinu Bahya. There's another answer here, just on the more on the Dvar Torah lane. And I heard this from my brother. He says something very beautiful. He says like this, the Gaon, I believe he quoted the Gaon of Vilna. And he says something over here, novelty. The Jewish people, we understand that they have to ask the Egyptians for money, right? The Gaon of Vilna says no. They had to ask the Egyptians for money, but they had to do something before that. Ve'yish'alu ish me'et re'ehu. First, they had to ask their brother, their Jew, their fellow Jew for money. And only after they gave us, then we were able to ask the Egyptians. First step was to get Jews to give Jews. Only after there's love between two Jews will we have the merit of the Goyim loving us and giving us. You know, today we wonder, why did the Goyim hate us? You ever had someone ask you that? Why is there so much anti-Semitism? But my friends, says the Gaon of Vilna, who are we kidding? Forget the Goyim hating us. We hate us. There are Jews that hate Jews. If Jews can't learn to love Jews, how do we expect the Goyim to love us? This is really how we got into the Galut to begin with. The whole mess started with the brothers selling Yosef. And the brothers selling Yosef was a sign of hatred. It was separating. And actually that sale was capped with the dipping of the robe of Yosef in blood. They dipped the robe and they showed their dad. And they said, Dad, Yosef is dead. It was a dipping that led to hatred. It was a ripping that led to the division. It was a dipping that led to division. And that's why when we leave Egypt, what does God say? Take a agudat ezov. Take a hyssop. Dip it in blood. Because you got into this mess by dipping blood into blood, but a dipping of hatred. And you're going to get out of this mess only when you learn that lesson. And you learn to dip into blood, but this time a dipping of love. Korban Pesach was eaten with friends, with other people. You invited a guy to your house. And what do we do every year on Pesach? We begin the Seder. Kol dechfin yeteh ve'yechul. Come into my house. Whoever's hungry, please come and eat. Pesach is a time of the year, my friends, that we learn that if we want to get out of this galut, we gotta follow the recipe of the getting out of Egypt galut. How do we get out of Egypt? We got out of Egypt because we learned to love, we learned to respect, we learned to put aside our differences. And only when we achieved that, only when we accomplished that, did we leave Egypt. Ve'yish'alu ish me'et re'ehu. You gotta first ask your brother, could I have your shirt? Could I borrow your chairs? I have a wedding. Do you mind if I borrow your car? When a Jew is able to give to another Jew, besimcha, happy for them. Sure, I have chairs. You don't lie and say, they're being used because you're jealous of your friend throwing a party. Besimcha. When I could be besameach, when I could be happy for another Jew, when I could love another Jew. Ve'yishalu ish, when a Jew borrows from a Jew, a friend, then will the Egyptians also be happy to give you their kelim, their vessels, their clothing, their jewelry, and their money. And so, but right before we leave Egypt, we dip the Agudat Ezov. And that's why says the Ben Ish Chai, on Pesach, how many times do we dip? Halayla hazeh, shetei pe'amim, vehalayla hazeh. Right? Shebechol halelot anu matbilim. Right? In anu matbilim afilu pa'amachat. On every night, we don't even dip once. And tonight, we're dipping twice. Says the Ben Ish Chai. Isn't that interesting? We're dipping twice on Pesach. You know why? To remind us of the two dippings that surrounded the Egyptian exile. There was a dipping before, there was a dipping after. There was a dipping that got us into the problem, the dipping of the robe of Yosef, of hatred. And then there was the dipping of the hyssop, of love, of unity. And we dip two times. The first thing we dip is the karpas. What's the karpas? Karpas, you ready for this? This is Ben Ish Chai Goods. Karpas, my friends, is Rashi. Where's the word karpas found? Anyone know? Karpas is celery, krefis, celery. But where is it found in the Tanakh? It's found in Megillat Esther. When it's showing off Ahashverosh's party, Hur, karpas utchelet, right, was one of the materials. Rashi says karpas is a very soft fabric, like ketonet pasim. Wow. Rashi says the word karpas is similar to the ketonet pasim, to the robe of Yosef. So the first thing we dip is the karpas, the celery. Why are you dipping celery? Dip any vegetable. You could. But we want to remind ourselves of the ketonet pasim, the dipping that got us into the mess, the first dipping. Why? You understand? And then we have the second of the maror, which is the reminding us of the agudat ezov in the haroset, in the blood. That is the dipping that gets us out of the galut. And therefore, my friends, we want to get out of this mess today. All what's going on in the world, all the hatred, all of the attacks. Forget the athletes. Forget the goyim. God will take care of them. Whoever they are. Forget the nonsense, messed up people in Hollywood that are hating us. What about us? Do we love each other? If we can't love each other, if there's someone, and again, I'm not talking about in general, do you love Jews? Every one of us will say, yes, Rabbi, I love Jews. I'm talking about right now, is there one person in your life, as a Jew, is there one Jew that you don't like, that you don't get along with? That's who you need to find room in your heart for. That is what's stopping Mashiach, that one person. I'm not saying that you gotta make the guy, that you gotta bring him out to your house and deal for the summer. I'm not saying that you have to invite him first to a wedding. But I'm saying to remove hatred. And again, there are cases, there are sometimes extreme situations that you need to stay away from somebody. But most of the time it's not the case. Most of the time we need to learn to forgive. Shelo ehad bilvad amad alenu lechalotenu. What does that mean? Simply it means it wasn't only once that someone tried to kill us. Many times someone tried to kill us. However, the Khatam Sofer says, Shelo ehad, when we're not one, when we're not together, amad alenu lechalotenu. When we're not one, that's the only thing that can destroy us. And therefore, kol dichfin yeteh v'yechul. Tonight on Pesach, everybody come in. Tonight on Pesach, everyone's my friend. Tonight I need to learn at least once a year to make room in my heart for every type of person. Like me, not like me, Ashkenaz, Sephardic, Syrian, Persian, Lebanese, Shami, Halabi, doesn't matter. Rabbi, they're made from a different cloth, we don't marry them, they're just different from us, for a reason. We can't talk like this, my friends. Can't talk like this. This is talking of the divisiveness. This is a talking of division. This is a dipping of negativity. We must dip for love. We must dip for connection. We must dip for unity. And Be'ezat Hashem, the Geulah will come very, very soon, speedily in our days. Amen. Okay, my friends, let's stop over here. Have a wonderful day. God willing, we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.